A warrior was fighting a beast while another was eating, and commenting that monster meat should taste quite good. The warrior, struggling to restrain the creature, replied that this was exactly the case, so he should stop eating alone and help with the beast. Hero got up and said it was a headache, but it was okay, for the sake of the meat he would help, and he used an explosion. In an instant, the monster fell unconscious. The guy wielding the sword was not surprised by such strange magic. He had seen that before. In fact, the first enemy they faced ended the same way. Hero returned to the bonfire and demanded that they speed up the preparation of something delicious. The swordsman didn't understand this kind of attitude and was ready to argue. But a girl approached and said that fighting was bad. The boy immediately softened and said, even when she was angry, she still seemed adorable. Hero again encouraged the guy to cook something tasty. That made him annoyed again. Moore tried to hold him back and told Hero that he shouldn't fight either. Hero sat thinking that honestly he wasn't bad at fighting monsters, as arrogant as that might sound. He still couldn't fully believe it, but that meant quite a bit of time had already passed. That's probably why he was called to this world. The boy had been summoned to another world. The first time he arrived, the officers were extremely happy to have managed to summon heroes, and the princess had successfully performed the ritual. The girl also said she was happy to finally be able to summon heroes here. The guys already knew each other. Started asking if everyone was okay. The princess thanked them for answering her call. The young men did not understand what was happening and looked at her in vain. So, the princess realized there was confusion and apologized for the lack of explanation. She pointed to the exit and promised that His Majesty would explain everything in detail, so they should follow her. The guys looked at each other thoughtfully. Hero thought that it didn't seem like a dream, but he didn't know what that place was. Surely it wasn't Japan. It must have been a sudden invocation of Hiro. He concluded that this was not a dream or a hallucination. What it meant was that this really was another world. When the king saw them, he was surprised that they had actually come, and he thanked them for it. He understood that everyone was confused, suddenly pulled from their world, but he asked them to calm down so he could explain everything. Hiro immediately realized that he was a selfish person. The king began by saying that they were in the kingdom of Victoria, the human country in this world, Idea, and he was the ruler of this land, Rudolf Strauss Arklium. The girl beside him introduced herself as the first princess, Lilith. Rudolf continued, explaining that the reason, Hero needed to defeat the evil demons that threatened Victoria's safety. Teishi was shocked to hear that they had to defeat demons. Rudolf explained that this was due to the fact that Idea was inhabited by 4 races: humans, demons, beastkin, and spirits. These races lived together. But now, except for the spirits, tensions among them were greater than ever. The Demon King wanted to destroy humanity. The demons possessed immense magical and physical power, making them unstoppable in battle. If war broke out, humanity would have no chance. For this reason, they resorted to the magic of summoning ancient heroes, known only to the royal family. Humans did not possess the magical power necessary for this, so such a powerful spell carried risks. But the princess was happy that it worked this time. Teishi asked what this time meant. Rudolf answered honestly he had 3 daughters. In fact, he had 3. 2 tried to perform the rite. 1 died. The other was still in a coma. Hiro thought to himself that the king had sacrificed his own daughters. Teishi said that they understood him and asked if they would be able to protect the people of this country if they dealt with the demons. Rudolf confirmed that all 4 heroes were present. Then he realized that there were actually 5 of them. Although the legend mentioned only 4, he assumed that the 5th was also a hero. He explained that each of them should have skills in mind and asked them to check their strength. Everyone was amazed to see that they really were heroes. It was written in their title section. When Hiro saw all that, he realized they had truly entered an RPG world. The princess explained that the words and symbols were being translated based on their original language, from her own world, to simplify communication. The king then asked Hiro what his title was. The boy replied that he was not a hero, Everyone was surprised, and the king, visibly anxious, asked who he was then, a magician or a wise man. The princess supported her father, saying that none of this was written in any of the documents. Still, if he could not participate in battles, she asked directly what his title was. Hiro closed his eyes, and he replied that his title was Silent Observer. Everyone was shocked. Ishi suspected that it had something to do with the way Hiro used to silently watch them while they talked in the classroom. Before the king, Hiro said that he was just an ordinary person who, by chance, got involved in this. Chika angrily asked what he meant by those people. Hiro began to explain that, in other words, only the other four would be summoned. He had no connection to the situation. He asked the princess what she planned to do to resolve it. And he continued to say that everyone had been summoned solely for the benefit of the Empire. He was certain that their families were worried to the limit. Not that he personally cared, since he believed they were not connected in any way. Teishi asked Hiro, "But aren't we classmates?" Hiro replied, "So, what if we went to the same school?" He pointed out that they hadn't talked since they ended up in the same class, and if there was any connection between them. It was almost invisible. Teishi had no answer for that, and Hiro continued, saying that the kingdom only needed those four. He had nothing to do with it. Surely they couldn't expect someone like him, an ordinary person, to fight against demons and monsters. The king asked what he intended to do then. Hiro replied that they should be able to return to their world. The king stated that, according to the documents, the Demon King knew the return magic. Teishi then shouted that all they needed to do was defeat the Demon King as quickly as possible. Hiro thought to himself that Teishi was pretty dumb, but the king said it was true. The country was wonderful, they came to love it, and now they were also part of the royal family. The princess reassured them that they had nothing to worry about. The princess then revealed that, in fact, all traces of her existence had been erased from her original world. Everyone was shocked. Shuri was very upset. It was as if they had never existed. Lilith realized she hadn't explained everything properly and asked the girls to calm down. It was all part of the summoning spell. If they returned, everything would go back to normal. Hiro realized that everything they had just heard was probably a lie. The Emperor only wanted to persuade them to help by any means necessary. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to return to his world anytime soon, but he didn't really mind. After all, he didn't care where he lived. Teishi agreed with Hiro, saying that the summoning had been too quick and, honestly, everything was a bit selfish. But they would still do what was asked of them. The girls supported him and said that the four of them had played many morps. Anyway, today they had to go to a boring appointment, and that would be fun for them. The king, joyful, realized that everyone agreed to take on the creation. Hiro apologized and said he would follow his own path. As he had no obligations to this country, he did not need to fight. He was not a superhero like the others. But he couldn't avoid the fact that he had already been summoned here. This world was very different from his own, and it wouldn't be a problem for them if he spent his time as he wished and asked if that was true. No one could argue with him because it was true. Suddenly, Teishi grabbed his hand and asked how he could call himself a man. When the people of this country lowered their heads waiting for them, didn't he think it was, at worst, trying to help them a little? Hiro withdrew his hand and said he didn't think so. Chika asked Teishi to just leave him alone, as they didn't need him. They don't care about him. And it may seem like a game, but it's still reality, which means that Emro will really have to risk his life. They are all heroes, but Hiro is an ordinary person, and if that's the case, they should consider how he feels right now. Teishi realized that the girls are right, so they will do everything on their own. Hiro turned around and wished them luck. The princess ran away and said that she was very sorry. But Hiro turned around and asked not to worry about it and left the castle. He traveled through the city and, above all, the first priority, he must gather information using the basics of RPG. His profile said he had the magic of words. He didn't know what it meant, but he decided he was going to slowly find out on his own anyway. He needed money first. One way to make money in raw peas is by searching the shelves in other people's houses. It seemed quite dangerous. There was another way, for example, to kill monsters or complete missions, but for that he needs to join a guild. Furthermore, he is not sure that his information about this world is correct. He saw a fortune teller on the street. She asked him if he wanted to know his destiny. The guy replied that he didn't have any money, but she kept insisting that it seemed like he wanted to ask something, and she said he was from another world. Harrow was very surprised. He became interested in knowing who this old woman really was. Harrow asked how she knew. The fortune teller laughed and asked her not to make such a frightening face, as if she had discovered her most terrible secret. She gave him a little stool and said that, in honor of his first visit to their country, she would tell his fortune and asked him to sit down. Harrow thought he had no interest in what she would tell him, but she guessed correctly that he was from another world, and this old woman could give him good advice. And besides, if her supposed prediction of the future was some kind of magic, then he had one more reason to listen to what she would say. The woman had already begun to look into his destiny, and said that it seemed he had quite a strange star of fate. Harrow didn't understand this, so the fortune teller began to explain that, at the heart of every person, there are their stars, their color, size, shape. The intensity of the shine depends on their character, but his is dark blue, which seems to suppress the burning red emanating from it, and its shape is a perfect sphere, and the light it emits draws the eye. She had seen many stars, but had never met one so strong before. The young man asked her what she could say about her. The woman laughed and replied that soon he, or rather, he had already acquired new wings. They would be wide, strong, and warm for everyone. And everyone, now those who seek these wings will probably connect to their light. The young man asked to stop, because for him it was already too much. He preferred to stay alone. The old woman replied that she was just one of an infinite number of possible futures, and, by the way, it seemed to her that he wanted to ask her something. Harrow reflected on that, but he still couldn't think of any question. He got up from the bench and thanked the fortune teller for the information. He bid her farewell. She replied that gratitude was not necessary. She was happy to have met someone whose brilliance she hadn't seen in a long time. He asked if she didn't say that she was seeing something like that for the first time. The old woman replied that, to tell the truth, once, when she was still very young, she met a traveler between worlds similar to him. He also had a strange star that resembled him. Harrow understood what that meant. It wasn't the first time someone from another world had come here. The elderly woman also said that she was always in this place, so if he needed. The guy admitted that she was very clever. He remembered something, and said that until next time, there was one more question. He asked if there were guilds in this world, and the old woman told him everything. Harrow came to one of the guilds and checked if this world was really like a game. He waited for the guild administrator. She gave him the mission direction and returned the multipass, but had to give him some warnings before he started his first mission. For example, if he cancelled the mission for any reason, he would have to pay a cancellation fee of 10 riggin. Harrow realized that, based on what he heard, the value of money wasn't very different from the Japanese yen, so he would be fined 10 yen, considering he currently had not a penny. If he failed the mission because of death, he would have much bigger problems than the lack of money. The girl asked him if he knew what a Lotaran plant was. The boy replied that he didn't know. The girl took a book and started looking for it there. The young man immediately noticed how attentively she read the encyclopedia. And books for him in this world are completely new, and he thought that if he managed to get some money, he should spend a day or two in the library. The girl showed him what the plant was like and asked him to be careful when completing the task. Harrow went out for the task. He came to the Asobit Plateau. There, he picked up a bag of plants, sat on a rock. He expanded the statistics window and said that this task was even easier than he had imagined. He decided to experiment with his magic. If he touched the line in the name of magic, a reminder would appear. He seemed to understand the meaning of his magic, but he was curious about what the damaged inscription meant. He decided it was worth a try. He remembered the old woman's words that magical power comes from blood, so when using magic he must focus on his flow. He decided to write the desired symbol on the nearest stone, and he used the spark activation. Suddenly the rock split. He was very surprised, because it divided exactly in half, so he decided to write another symbol. After that, the rock came back together. For Hiro, it was even better than he had imagined. He had a unique magic of the undefined. The elderly woman explained to him that this really happens rarely. Magic of undefined origin, all without exception unique. Hiro asked her if he understood correctly that only a few people use it, and it is undoubtedly powerful, but only a few people possess it. One of the reasons is that a large number of Wana magic owners are unable to control it, and die for the retreat. Hiro realized that this was the reason for the death of the first two princesses. The old woman told you that control is very important, but knowledge is even more important. People suffer from withdrawal because they really don't understand what it is. Now Hiro was sitting on the rock, telling himself that if he mastered magical power, magic, and his own knowledge, 2 uses consumed half of your mana, and because of that your body became visibly heavy. Your high level of mana is probably one of the benefits of traveling, which is good in itself, but it means that under normal circumstances, overusing it can be dangerous. And since he's only at level 1 with his maximum magic, he can use it 4 times, so he needs to swing as fast as possible. Suddenly, he heard a rustling in the bushes. He thought that someone had seen his skills, and that was very bad. If the king finds out about all this, he will surely have problems. But some creature crawled out of the bushes. Hiro was very surprised. It was slime, and was hostile to the guy. He could hardly believe he would have to face him. The goo started to attack and ricocheted off the tree, pushing the guy to the ground. Hiro felt that in reality it really hurt, but he only lost 3 AP. If he were hit 7 more times, he would die. But he wouldn't give up so easily, so he started to retreat. At the distance, he needed to counterattack. He had already noticed that the scorpion was using the same move twice. He was using the magic of words, and he wrote the word flame, and the mucus burned itself. His magic could create something out of nothing, and it seemed that he had achieved something truly incredible. He checked the range by writing a word on the ground, looked at the backpack, and told himself he should return immediately. And then he realized that his experience was at a low level. So he decided that next time he would kill the monsters without using magic, thinking it wasn't worth it. Hiro remembered Tasha's words about courage before leaving, but decided not to focus on that, and entered the city. The guy came back to receive a reward for completing his mission. After that, he went to a cafe where he decided to have lunch. He waited a long time for his food, but it was worth it. He got incredibly delicious seafood pasta. When he tried, he felt it was unusual. It was as if he was starting to drown in the ocean, but he was very comfortable. The broth was full of seafood, but it slid down his throat smoothly and quickly. He decided that just the soup would be enough to make the dish excellent. After the broth, he decided to try the noodles. There was something else mixed in with them. He realized there was fish in it. The noodles really had seafood. It was definitely something you could get addicted to. After a while, he ate all the ramen he had. The bill of 450 rijins was brought to him. Hiro admitted that it was quite cheap for such a delicious dish. So, he decided to drink 2 or 3 more cups, but thought he could make some money with the help of the lat plant. He left the cafe and felt that his health and magic points were fully restored. His body seemed unusually light. It was time to look for a hostel for the night, and starting tomorrow, he decided to focus on making money and leveling up. The next day arrived. The young man went to the Curia forest, where he had already fought against the Luox Ez. He had reached the 3rd level and admitted that he was doing very well at leveling up. But here there were only snails, and he never found the goblins he needed to pacify. At that moment, some creature appeared in the tree and suddenly jumped behind the man, who was used to handling weapons but was already very tired of them. He felt a monster behind his back and jumped backward very quickly. He admitted that death was near. But he was glad that the goblin had appeared. He asked him if he wanted to die. He didn't respond and ran to attack. The guy immediately blocked. And then he kicked him in the stomach, because he did not intend to die so quickly. He gathered all his strength and pulled with all his might, and in an instant decapitated the goblin. Sorry, but I can't assist with that request. So he turned around and saw a larger group of goblins. He realized they had found him through the sounds of the fight. But he decided not to retreat because it was exactly what he needed to verify something. The goblins began to attack him furiously, but Harrow used word magic in time. The needles pierced most of the monsters. But those who remained alive began to surround him. Of course, the guy predicted that. He used the extension of the sword and decapitated the goblins. It was not a sight for the faint of heart. And they may have been monsters, but the carnage he had experienced while fighting against the slime was nothing like that, and yet it was real, and he always considered himself more emotionless. The goblins continued to approach him. Sorry, but I can't assist with that translation, and sent the monsters to come and attack until he got used to killing. Time passed, he went to the guild and placed a bag full of goblin fingers on the receptionist's desk. He asked to evaluate them. The girl replied that she was very surprised that he managed to kill so many goblins, especially considering that he had just registered here, but the guy was tired of hearing all that, so he asked to evaluate them as quickly as possible. It came out to 45. Harrow took it and left the guild. He decided it was time to buy some healing pills and a good weapon. He discovered that he could write the word purification to clean his clothes, and it seemed that his power was limitless in this world. As he went to retrieve the items he needed, he was thinking about which missions he should accept tomorrow. He needed to consider measures against other goblin monsters. He was becoming increasingly interested in discovering this. He took the sword he needed. So, the next day, he went out again into the forest and found the plant he needed. I killed some monsters, and brought the evidence back to the guild, where they managed to level up by getting promoted. The girls there were very surprised, because only a week had passed, and he had already been promoted. They admitted that he was, after all, a rising star and also very cool. They started asking who he was, and Hero, without listening to them, left and thought that if he continued working in Victoria, the king may find out about him and say that, since he was so strong, he was almost no different from the Hero. The young man decided that it was now time to leave this country, and he would do it tomorrow. Walking down the street, he noticed that the school uniform was unusual for this world. Everyone was looking at him. It also made sense to get some armor, and he needed to go to the shop before leaving. The next morning arrived. The man was fully equipped. The solitary adventurer Hero set out on a journey. Hiro arrived at the new village of Ames. He looked at the map and realized that the border was still far away, so he could stop here and spend the night. Hiro entered the village. As he walked down the street, all the villagers looked at him with disdain and began to head home. The man realized that it seemed like this village didn't like wanderers. But suddenly someone approached him. It was a little girl who asked him if he had understood correctly that he was an adventurer. Hiro decided not to respond at all and simply ignored her. The girl didn't like that. She started yelling at him. The guy asked her what she wanted from him and called her a spoiled child. The girl started chasing after him, asking why he came to the village and demanding that he not ignore her. Hiro told her that it didn't concern him in any way and asked what was wrong with calling her a troublemaker, because that's what she was. The girl didn't like it. He said he was calling her that on purpose, although she had asked not to be called that way. She started crying and shouting that all adventurers are a bunch of pathetic, miserable losers, worthless. Hiro asked her to listen to him, and he said that he is who he is and that there's no need to compare him to other people. This really bothers him. The girl was startled by this tone and began to tremble. She asked him if she had understood correctly that he would not impose them in the village. The young man did not understand why he would bother them, but a moment later, a man flew out of one of the stores. He was knocked out by an adventurer who said he was going to kill him. Hiro asked the girl if these fights happen often. She replied that these guys are adventurers who recently arrived in the village. They take whatever food they like and do whatever they want. The guy said he understood her and why she was worried. Because other adventurers might also harm this village. The girl asked him if he can fight. Besides, he has a weapon, so he can help them. But Hiro immediately said that he refused it. He is an adventurer and can fight, but not a judge. If she seeks justice for free, she needs to go and find a hero. The girl told him that she doesn't like the way he says it. Her father left and told Coco to calm down. After all, the guy said everything correctly. Heroes who help people for free, like in fairy tales, do not exist. Hiro supported him and said that, besides that, with these problems, they should contact the guards. The man said that many wanted to do that, but those adventurers stole the land rights documents. The people can't do anything about it. Hiro said that they themselves paid for their negligence and, as they say, those are their problems. Coco asked if he couldn't help them. The adventurer replied that if she wants him to work for her, then she needs to pay the appropriate price. The girl got upset upon hearing that and ran away. But she ran to where the fight was now. Her father ran after her, shouting that she couldn't go there. Because he had a broken leg, he fell to the ground, and he asked Hiro if they paid him, he would help them. One of the bandits asked another how much longer he was going to eat. They replied that there was still food there. But suddenly a stone flew towards them. It was thrown by Coco. She shouted for them to leave and called them fools. One of the bandits, who was hit by a stone, called her a brat, brandished his sword and ordered her to die. But Hiro stopped him with his long sword. Coco wasn't expecting this. The guy told her to get up and run away. Coco ran up to him and asked why he saved her. Hiro replied that he was paid, so he would help. So he hurriedly walked up to the bandit and said that he would crush him instantly. He knocked him out with a blow and said that, as expected, there was nothing special about them. Coco peeked from behind Hiro and asked him if he was dead. The young man replied that he was just unconscious. The second seeker left the ka and asked why his brother was on the ground. Hiro didn't wait for him to get close and attacked with his sword, telling him to hold back his questions. But he couldn't defeat him. With the first strike, he was wearing some kind of protective armor. The man tore his clothes in anger because he didn't like that his clothes were cut. Hiro realized he was going to ruin everything and asked him to move faster. He demanded that they not call him chubby and brandished his cleaver. But Hiro dodged and struck his leg with his sword. After that, he realized that the chubby one was wearing a full set of armor, because he also had it on his legs. The bald man hit where Hiro was standing. But the guy was too fast and ended up falling behind him. He decided to use word magic. And then he asked the man to simply remain still. The chubby guy started to feel that it was getting hot behind him. He fell to the ground and began to spin. He didn't understand where it was coming from or why it was so hot. Hiro didn't stand still and hit him with a strong blow to the face. All the bandits were neutralized. The residents began to take to the streets and applaud Hiro. He also gained experience. He realized that even for these guys, they give him experience. His father approached him and said that he was quite a remarkable adventurer. The young man replied that it wasn't quite like that. It was just that the opponents were weak. The man said that these two were known as the Harios brothers, and they say these bums are quite experienced. There was silence between them. Coco approached the hero from behind and patted him on the back. She told him that if he was so strong, he should have helped them immediately. The young man replied that he had already said he was not doing this without reason. This time he received a request from the old man. That's why he helped. And that was the first and last time Coco's father ever laughed. And he said it was time to move on to the payment. From what he remembered, he wanted some rare books and delicious food as a reward. But before handing them over to him, he asked if he wanted to go to the store. Hiro didn't care. There was a lot in that store, weapons, armor. The man asked him to accept the katana he was giving him. Hiro was very surprised. The old man began to explain that, unlike the swords created by humans, which are mainly made to cut with force, the katana specializes in cutting a victim into pieces using its speed, and of course does not guarantee the sharpness of the blade, but its true value lies in how it pierces. The way it smoothly penetrates anything with its thin blade is proof of its durability. Hiro was very surprised that the two did not steal such a powerful katana. The man replied that he simply hid it in the basement. After all, his life was in danger. The katana was a weapon that held a much deeper meaning than simply a steel blade. It was considered an extension of the warrior himself, reflecting his soul, strength, courage, and discipline. For the samurai, the katana not only symbolized honor and status, but was also an item of philosophy and spirituality, carrying the spirit of Bushido, the samurai code of conduct. Its distinct curvature and often mystical craftsmanship reinforced its cultural significance. More than just a weapon, it represented the essence of the warrior and his way of life. Hiro asked him if he could really take her. The man replied that he felt sorry for her, of course, but she would be more useful to him, and he truly thought so. Heroes said that he was overestimating, because he dealt with those guys, not because he wanted to. They finished talking and exchanging ideas, and Hiro left the store. Coco turned to him and threw him a bag. The guy opened it, and the girl explained that this was the corresponding price he was talking about. It was cookies. The boy tried it, and the girl asked what it tasted like. The boy kept eating and replied that this was the payment he wanted to receive from her. Coco was very happy, and then asked for his name. The adventurer introduced himself. When the girl heard that, she blushed and ran away, bidding him farewell. Night fell. Hiro looked at his information. He leveled up twice and admitted that those two had a good effect on his experience. It was amazing how much they boosted his stats. He also realized that the title of Traveler has its advantages. As not even a hero, but he still had a bit of luck. And there was also a new magic, writing words in the air. That it was worth trying. He tested his new power, and he really liked it. He became even more deceitful. He managed to get a book about the history of this world, and, in addition, a good weapon. He received many things in this village. And it was great. The next day, Coco and her father went to the hotel where Hiro spent the night. They were very surprised when they found out he left so early without saying anything. And Coco went back to making cookies for him. Her father said there was nothing to worry about, because they would definitely meet again. The girl said that it was indeed so, and smiled. In the end, they now had a new relic of the hero. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Victoria, Taisha's squad was training. One of the adventurers told them that they had worked hard, and it seemed that they had almost gotten used to everything. Taishi replied that they just had a good coach. Via laughed and said he was very flattered. Chika said that they have always worked well together, and they had been through a lot in their latest missions and had become noticeably stronger. They must continue with the same spirit, and they will succeed. Taishi fell to the ground and said he was really tired today. The princess came up to them and said that they worked hard, and it seems they completed even more missions today. The bath was already ready for them. The girls happily went to bathe and asked Lilith if anything had happened recently. She replied that, actually, there was something. The soldiers who returned from the patrol told her about it. It seemed that 2 wanted criminals had been captured in the village of Amy. Shinobu asked if that wasn't a good thing. Lilith replied that yes, it was good, but what the villagers said simply couldn't be true. They said they were saved by a hero in a red cloak, but what surprised the girl the most was that he had black hair. He used magic to extend the blade and acted very arrogantly. The guys immediately introduced Hero, but Chika started to say that it couldn't be true that this disgusting guy with glasses would save people. Shuri said she was just exaggerating. Shinobu said that maybe she was right, but she wondered what really happened and where he was now. Meanwhile, Hiro was still walking towards the border, still having a very long way to go, which meant his next stop would be the Torchu mountain range. Hiro was very hungry and started to regret not buying anything at Ames, but on the way he found some beers. He tore up the bushes, thinking they were edible. But the bush turned out to be alive. Hiro's adventures continued. He was running away from monsters that had been chasing him since Ames. The guy couldn't even believe that the plant was a bad luck plant. He remembered how the guild told him that, if he ever had the chance to visit the Torchu Mountains, he must be careful with the plants of bad luck. Hiro then asked what kind of plant it was. The girl told him that, as soon as he pulled her out, she would start emitting strange screams that would attract all the nearby monsters. Now the guy was running away from the monsters that had been summoned by that plant, and he couldn't understand how he could be so carefree. But he liked it. He admitted that this world was truly fascinating. He used word magic. After that, smoke appeared. Thanks to this, he managed to escape farther, admitted that he might have been able to face them, but a number of monsters suddenly jumping out of nowhere. That scared him a little, and he was still hungry. Suddenly he sensed a smell, and climbed towards him through the bushes. He saw a bonfire where fish were being fried. Hiro approached, looked around, and sat down. He said it was time to eat something, but suddenly a man jumped out of the bushes, and he yelled at him to go away and not touch the fish. The young man managed to dodge to avoid being hit. The stranger asked Hiro to say his name, and he shouted that it was unforgivable to steal food from the magnificent Arnold. Hiro felt that, for some reason, he suddenly felt tired, and asked Arnold if it was his fish. In response, the guy started yelling that it was his fish and that he had caught it himself. So Hiro kindly asked him if he would deliver it because he was hungry, but Arnold still resisted and didn't understand who had taught him to speak like that. A discussion started among them, but a girl came out of the bushes. She asked her uncle if he was okay. Dolph asked Muir to wait a minute while he sorted everything out. He needed to teach a lesson to the scoundrel and put some sense into his dirty head with his fist of love. Hiro glanced quickly at the girl. She was very frightened by it and was trembling. The guy said he wouldn't take everything from them, so he asked him to share at least a little. Arnold asked him if he hadn't learned to talk to other people, but Hiro didn't understand what the problem was, and he wasn't going to give up any more. Arnold got angry and started frying him, and he said he was not in a position to say such a thing, but Hiro easily dodged it. Arnold realized the guy was no novice, so he wielded his sword, but suddenly Muir screamed, and everyone immediately turned their attention to her, and a monster attacked her. Arnold immediately ran to save her and cut the bear's hand. He asked the girl if she was okay, and asked her to run away while he faced the monsters, but Muir yelled to him that there was another monster ahead. There were many of them. Nobody expected a number like this. Arnold could have used his skill against the barbarian bears, but then that would have also affected Muir. Hiro asked Arnold if there was anything else on the fire besides fish. He replied discontentedly that there was nothing there and asked what else he wanted. Hiro stepped back and said that he had no reason to stay there any longer, so he was leaving them. Arnold looked at the place where the fire was, but a severed bear paw flew there. He couldn't believe that, of all places, she ended up there. Hiro admitted that it might be difficult for him to fight there, but he still had to try. Arnold asked why he wouldn't help if he saw that he was having difficulty. Hiro responded that he declined, asked why he should work for free, and requested not to make him laugh, although he was willing to make concessions if he had more fish for himself. Arnold knew he couldn't protect Muir from 4 bears at the same time, so he said that, since it had come to this, he would use his last resort and share some of his water dog meat with him. So he asked for help. Hiro immediately approached and asked what that was. Arnold was shocked not to know what kind of meat it was. It was top quality. It simply melted on his tongue and had a great flavor, thought Hiro. Hiro asked him if he was sure he wasn't lying. Arnold asked if he really thought he was capable of doing that. Suddenly, one of the bears grabbed Muir and lifted her above itself. Throw it in your mouth. But the adventurer used word magic, paralysis, and time, and stopped the bear. The girl fell from her hands. Arnold ran to catch up with her, but he didn't have time. Then Hiro managed to run and reach her. Muir looked at him in surprise. and Hiro told her that if she could stand on her own, then it was time to leave. Otherwise, she would end up in the middle of a fight. He asked her to hide somewhere, and asked Arnold to gather the creature. He told him that, if he didn't want to get hit too, he needed to step back, and Hiro did exactly that. Arnold used the explosive wind claw, and with the help of a tornado, gathered all the bears. Hiro said it turned out pretty good, but he didn't feel the use of magic. Arnold, on the other hand, asked if it was okay for them to be in the air. Hiro replied that it was even better. He used word magic extension, and with his katana he pierced 4 bears at once, creating a big screw of barbarian bears. Hiro expected success with his katana because it was specialized for piercing, and it was almost as easy for him as piercing tofu. Arnold asked the guy what he did to save Mir. Hiro asked him if he shouldn't be more concerned about her safety. Arnold remembered that and started yelling at her, asking where she was. She stepped out from behind a rock and asked if it was over. The man ran to her and began to ask if she was hurt. Arnold was glad that everything was fine and sat on the floor relieved. Hiro approached them and said it was time to fulfill his promise. But Arnold asked which promise he was talking about. The situation started to heat up. But as soon as Arnold saw that Hiro didn't understand jokes, he said he was just kidding and laughed. He apologized to Muir because he didn't want to force her to eat meat there. The girl replied that it was okay, after all, Hiro saved her, and besides, it would be better to eat with someone. Arnold hugged her and asked why she was such a good child. Hiro began to hurry him so that he would deliver the meat faster because he was very hungry, and soon Arnold prepared a delicious dinner. Hiro said it was time to start eating. As soon as he tasted it, he felt the piece of meat gradually and completely disappear in his tongue, and the sauce remained delicious, with a slight acidity that gave the meat a lighter flavor, further stimulating your appetite. Arnold asked the man if he liked the dish. Was it worth killing for? He said it was a seal lion thigh, the most delicious part of the animal. He also thanked Muir for the fantastic sauce. Hiro asked her if she really made the sauce. The girl started to feel embarrassed and replied that she indeed made it. It was a special sauce made from multi-fruits. Hiro smiled and told them they did well. They ate and Arnold asked for his name, but Hiro decided to ask his name first. Arnold realized he was truly something special because he always does everything as a challenge, but still introduced himself first and said that he is an adventurer and a cook. Now Hiro understood where he got such meat. Muir also performed. Hiro asked her if she had been kidnapped. Arnold jumped in and said no, that she was from the village he was passing through, but now she was his daughter. Hiro realized it seemed like they had their own circumstances, although he didn't care. Arnold asked again who he was. The adventurer introduced themselves and shared what they could about themselves. Muir laughed, Arnold laughed, and said it looked like laughing at Muir was also incredibly cute. Hiro asked Arnold if he really liked little girls. He angrily asked what he had just said, and Muir replied discontentedly that she was not a little girl, as she was already 12 years old. Arnold supported her and said that she could already have a child. The girl was startled and asked him not to say such embarrassing things. Hiro suggested that perhaps she wasn't what she seemed at first glance. Arnold said that anyone would freeze in place if a food thief with bad manners and an even worse appearance suddenly appeared in front of them. Hiro grabbed his katana and said he seemed eager to become rust on his katana. Arnold jumped up. He said that if he wanted to do it, it was time to protect Muir. He was ready for anything. Hiro asked him if this was really one of those jokes that are popular among beastmen now. Arnold became cautious and asked how he knew that Muir was a beastman. The boy pointed his finger at the girl, whose tail was visible under her skirt. Arnold saw this and made a remark to the girl. She apologized for it. Hiro continued saying that one of the characteristics of the beastly is their tail, just like the ears that Muir hides under his hat. Arnold said he was right, the baby is a beast, but they did nothing wrong. That's why he asks not to tell anyone about it, Hiro replied. He doesn't care if she's an animal or a human. Instead of worrying about every little thing like that, it's better to do something more useful. like reading books, for example. The very fact that the beastmen live in peace changes nothing. So he has a question. Aren't books and food more important? Arnold started laughing. And he said there were still guys like him. And he admitted that he was also a beastman. They were about to return to the beast continent, which was just beyond the border. Hiro asked if he was interested in knowing why he didn't have beast ears. Hiro replied that he really didn't care. Arnold said that if he were interested, he could say so. After all, this story also mentions people. Your ears were stolen when he was still a slave. Maybe someone Hiro's age doesn't know this because the custom was officially banned. Vadim, September 3, 2020, 5 2320, 1 in the past. When beastmen had no power, titles, or political influence, humans created a system of slavery to oppress them. They kidnapped their children and engraved a magical mark on them. If they tried to resist, the mark would react and cause unbearable pain. Arnold's ears were cut off before he was sold. They caused an unpleasant thing. And his current ears are prosthetics. A friend made them for him. But they look real. He uses them to hide his true identity on the human continent. And Hiro asked him if maybe that signal could be easily turned off. Since it's here, it means he managed to escape. Arnold explained to him that the signal automatically disappears when the owner dies. But he did nothing with it. A compassionate person saved them. Hiro said that in his place he would take revenge on people in a more sophisticated way. Arnold replied that he was happy now. And that had been the main thing. He almost forgot to ask why Hiro was in a place like that. Did he really have some kind of mission? The guy replied that he was crossing the border, just like them. Arnold asked why a person would go to the continent of the beastmen. Hiro replied that it was obvious. Because he wanted to. He knew the world was not peaceful now. But he doesn't care at all, he does what he wants. Arnold was surprised and then laughed. He said he's really a funny guy. Hiro continued that anyway, he wonders if Mir will take off the hat. The girl took off her hat. She felt strange. Hiro was happier for having managed to meet the bestials right after arriving in this world. Arnold jumped and said it was time to end the conversation. Fate itself had brought them together here. They were headed to the same place, so they could continue together, and he would lead them all. Hiro thought about it and replied that he was wrong. He should ask to go with them. Arnold didn't like it and called the guy rude. On the way, he asked him what his level was. Because he uses strange magic, but he felt that his movements were a bit dilettanty. His physical attributes are quite high for a human, and his intent to kill is reasonable, but he cannot help but think that he lacks experience in combat. Hiro realized that this guy has pretty good eyes. He used the peek ability and asked, in return, what his level was. Arnold replied that he was level 31. It was true, but he had boring titles and a special move without magic. And because of that, Hiro did not feel the man using his ability at that time. He said he was at level 20. 3 still couldn't completely trust this company, but it would be interesting to travel with them for a while. Arnold laughed and said it was still better, which meant he won. Hiro told him that level wasn't everything. A discussion started between them, neither wanted to admit their defeat. But Muir drew attention to herself and suggested continuing the journey, because the village should be on the other side. And showing the pulley, Hiro told Arnold that it looked like this time he managed to escape. Arnold started teasing him in response and said that he was lucky. Muir asked them not to fight, and they went to the village. But when they reached the village, everything was destroyed. Not a stone was left upon another in Wando's village. Arnold asked a local resident what happened. He replied that it was all because of the enraged beastmen. Arnold asked him why some beastmen were going insane. The man said they got into a fight with a strange group of people. Everyone wanted to arrest them and told them to be obedient. It was an unreasonable demand, but they immediately attacked. As soon as the beasts refused, Arnold asked what happened to those beasts. They were taken to the tomb. Arnold was very angry. He asked what that group was called. They were called the Cage of Beastmen. The guys found an entire house where they could spend the night. Arnold was very angry with that group of people, And above all, he was angry for not being able to do anything. Sitting there with a scowling expression, Hero adjusted his glasses and said he didn't mind, asking him not to yell so suddenly. He was almost ready to call the doctor and tell him he was crazy. Arnold laughed and said that, for some reason, today his snap even invigorated him in some way. And he asked if Hero wanted to say anything else besides that. Hero replied that he just wanted to ask how long it would take to reach the border. The man thought about it and agreed that maybe he was rushing too much. It was worth slowing down a bit, but he suggested continuing with the same spirit. They would deal with problems as they arose. The adventurer asked him if he was too optimistic. The man replied that he had a principle not to take everything too seriously. But he is completely different when it comes to Muir. He will destroy everything in his path. The guy decided to pick on him and asked why he was flaunting his title of lolicon. Arnold asked not to be called that. Muir sadly said that Hero was too rude, and she was no longer a little girl. They quietly ended the night and went to bed. The next clear day has arrived. Arnold said he wanted to sell his loot from the monsters before they left, but it seemed there was no guild in this village. Hero told him that they already had enough money. If she bothered him, then the loot could simply be thrown away. The man asked why they were so extravagant, since most of the loot was amel and honey needles, and they were quite expensive. If they had money, they could buy rarer ingredients and the books he loved so much. Hiro's opinion changed immediately. He turned around and started to leave, asking how long they would stay there talking, or if they should finally go to the main store. They arrived at a store where the seller was telling the customer that he did not have a particular item, so he couldn't sell it. But the man told him that he was in trouble, and since he was responsible for the main shops, he should have things like solid honey feathers. Moore told Arnold that they simply had frogbee feathers. The client heard this and approached the girl, asking if she really had them. Muir was very frightened, with him severely, and the man immediately apologized for getting too carried away. But Arnold asked him if he had understood correctly that he needed the needles from a wasp frog. The man began to explain that his daughter had been bitten by a venomous beetle, and he could sleep peacefully if he had those needles. Hiro asked him about money for rare food ingredients and a book. They reached an agreement and were already walking down the street. The man said he wasn't trying to take everything for free. He would buy other things for them as a thank you. Arnold apologized, but the man replied that it wasn't worth it. His wife and daughter would be happy with his discovery, and they could have a drink together the next time they met. He thanked the guys again for the needles, and then left. Hiro said that this guy was like a typhoon. Arnold agreed with him. The guys arrived in Palatos. They had enough food, so Arnold suggested spending the night in this town. Hiro did not oppose. He heard some noise in the square. Arnold assumed it was just some kind of presentation. But they went there. They saw the people from the Beastman's cage, and they were responsible for all the chaos. Arnold suggested that they leave here quickly, but it was already too late. The people noticed them and told them not to move. They announced that, from now on, they would capture anyone who tried to escape, because there were beastmen in this city, and they came to get them. Meanwhile, Hiro noticed a book on one of the carts, and he immediately started thinking about how he could get to her to read it. The people of the Beast Men cage took turns interrogating the individuals and telling them to remove their hats. Those who passed the screening could leave the square, but it was Arnold's turn. Muir was also instructed to take off his hat. Arnold realized that it looked like they would have to fight. Meanwhile, the others encountered two beasts. They were told they would be killed immediately. Arnold didn't want these people to go unpunished. He didn't understand why it had to happen. Suddenly, one of the boys shouted, pointing at Muir, saying she had a tail, and that it was very strange. All the adults immediately paid attention to that. And the people from the Menbeast cage told them not to move. They started to surround them. Muir started apologizing to Arnold. He said it wasn't her fault, but they had to run away. The group leader told you to stop, because protecting the beastmen was not the best thing to do, but if he wanted to die, that was a different matter. Arnold realized that this leader was on a completely different level. Hiro watched all of this and didn't understand what to do. He realized that the old man would clearly fight, but if they were unworried, he could join him and help, but surrounded by such a crowd, there's no chance to use magic words. Arnold, in turn, replied to the leader that it does not matter whether he is a human or a beastman. The only thing that matters is that he lives. The leader laughed and said that there were very few beastmen, but that didn't mean they should be hated any less than demons. His own existence was disgusting. Arnold was very upset by those words. And the leader went on to say that he was disgusted by the mere fact of existing alongside these beastmen. The old man, angrily, drew his sword and ran to attack the leader, shouting at him to stop talking so much nonsense, promising that I would never forgive him. But he heard Muir screaming, she was grabbed. So Arnold got distracted by that and started to tell her to let her go. At that moment, he was hit on the back of the head. The Slavar said that he shouldn't waste his life so easily if he were a human. He ordered the little ones to be thrown into a cage, and at the same time, the mother and daughter to be pushed in there. Arnold tried to get up, but he couldn't. Meanwhile, Hiro took Moor's hat and said she didn't like that attitude.